Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Standing Stone podcast. This episode is all about pedigrees. So for those of you that have geeked out with me in the past, looking at the lineage of dogs, we're going to add something that's even more exciting or just as exciting and a lot of similarities. I've got Dale with me here, head of the breeding management program at El Tesoro, and I got the opportunity to watch your presentation on how you work through the deer breeding and how those pieces are applied. And there's a ton of similarities as well as a few differences in what you have to look at. And I thought it'd be really cool to kind of do a compare and contrast on what those things look like between dogs and deer. So first and foremost, thank you for joining me.
Yes, sir.
All right, we've got a couple things. I'm going to start with the basics. When you are looking at pedigrees themselves, what is the program? Let's start just programs on the computer. What is the program that you guys use to manage all of the pedigrees, all of the deer genetics, everything?
So we use a program called Game Management Solutions, or GMS, and through GMS we can populate the pedigrees and bloodlines for our different deer, whether bucks, does, fawns, and so every fawn that's born gets DNA'd, and then we get a DNA number, and from that DNA number, we're able to pull all that information into one centralized location to be able to see the entire history of that deer, how many fawns it's had, how many bucks it's had, how many does it's had. So it's all in one program.
Yeah, you're using GMS for tracking everything.
Correct.
The DNA from the deer, how many babies they've had, who you've bred them to, basically everything is done in one system.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome. When you're looking at pedigrees themselves, do you have a specific number of generations that you guys are looking back on, or?
I generally try to look back 3 generations.
Okay.
As we can see here, I got one of my breeder bucks pulled up.
Yeah.
SOS. So I'm looking back at the past 3 generations. So we got Stitches on top, which is a producer of big, framey, typical deer. And then on the bottom side, on the doe, we'll got Dooley over Little General. So we're going back 3 generations typically to see what kind of characteristics those deer through, so we can kind of anticipate what our offspring are going to look like coming out.
Absolutely. Now, in the past episode that I did, we kind of broke down how we plan out breedings themselves, and then move through multiple generations even to kind of go like, well, this would be what that breeding is, and then if I take that and breed it to this, and then that, and then this, and we can work through multiple generations at the same time with a guesstimate of how things are going to work, right?
Correct.
And then try and apply it with actually doing the breedings and seeing what truly comes out, and then making adjustments from there.
So we're actually doing the same, except with what we're doing, we're having to look at hunter harvest to kind of dictate how that breeding plan worked out in the future. So we have deer that are harvested this year that are from several years ago on their breeding plan. So on everything released, they have a microchip, and we're able to scan that microchip to see, okay, who's that sire, who's that dam, and then from there we can learn on what type of characteristics that breeding program through, whether it's a non-typical buck, whether it's large brow tines, large tines in general, heavy mass, and then take that information that's learned from those hunter harvests, tie them back into, okay, I like this particular look from this deer, I like this particular look from this deer. Let's combine those two to see if we can't get the mass of buck A with the tine length of buck B, put them together to get the best of both worlds.
Interesting. So when we are developing, it's very cool. I mean, really, maybe this is ignorance, but I never truly thought about a deer breeding program having actually being a thing. Like you think about deer in the wild, and the way that the deer are raised here, and the program that's set up on El Tesoro is different as well. Again, you have the breeding program, and then there's the pasture where there's a lot of completely untouched deer being raised. And
Correct. So we have the breeding pasture, which gets all the release bucks. Those bucks are directly influenced by the breeding program within the deer facility. And those fawns that are released at 6 months old after being live tested, they're growing up in the pasture. They're basically as wild as you can get from coming from a pen environment.
Absolutely.
But then on the flip side of that, we have our big pasture, which is completely pasture born. The only introduced genetics that you'll see out there is maybe some released does, just to supplement the genetics out in the main pasture. But it's two different scenarios. You got pasture born, you got pen raised.
Yeah.
And just seeing that difference between the two, how fast those deer are getting mature, how fast they're getting up to that high score in the pen raised area compared to that in the pasture.
Absolutely.
With the deer breeding program, we're able to get those bucks bigger quicker by the way how we pick our breeding plan, which helps out with the ultimate goals of the ranch ownership.
Absolutely. So in our program, we're developing the dogs for the El Tesoro quail and dog program this way. When we're looking at characteristics for our dogs, I try and find a number of different things. We have German short hair pointers. They are a versatile dog. Okay, so there's a lot of variety in that. You say the jack of all trades kind of deal, right?
Right.
But it's at the same time you can pick and choose things to lead you down a specific path. And
correct.
With us, we're trying to produce, with Standing Stone Kennels, is a family-oriented, versatile hunting companion. In that order, they've got to have good dispositions and good personalities, and then also be able to hunt to the extreme. I hunt 60 days in the Dakotas, and then the dogs come down here for 120 more days, and then there's mixed in Kansas hunting in between there, and it's a lot of an ask, right? It's way more than the average person is going to get. So how do we find the personalities that can truly be able to be family companions for most of the year while still being able to do that hunting aspect of things when they come out? So we look for dogs that are bird dogs first and foremost. At the ranch here, our ask is steady to wing, shot, and fall, which is basically the highest level that you can get in a steadiness and obedience category. If you look at any of the testing programs that are out there, there's multiple registries, and you have field trials, you have hunt tests, and then you have NAVDA events. In all of those, the highest level of achievement involves this steady to wing, shot, and fall process. Now, the interesting thing about that, and what takes this program again to the next level, is in those test events, it's pretty cut and dry setups. And I don't want to say setups because they're not. There's birds placed out there, though, for the event. And the dogs typically handle one bird. It flies. It dies. And then they had to go pick it up and bring it back and do all of those things really, really well. Now, we've taken that to, let's do it 40 or 50 times with a covey flush of birds, and then add cocker spaniels that come in and scurry around and flush the birds for you. So a lot of pieces. You need a dog that's mentally stable, that naturally wants to stand, that can handle that advanced amount of pressure, right? They've got to be able to do it right. They've got to be able to do it multiple times, and they've got to be able to do it in not just a single bird, but an explosion of a covey flush, and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And that adds an extreme level of difficulty. So we've got to have dogs that are mentally stable, naturally want to point and back, and then have really strong retrieving desire. So an interesting part of the versatile dog category is, and I describe it a lot as a sliding needle, okay? So the perfect dog would be straight up and down. The needle is here. You've got a perfect balance of retriever and flush and pointer, excuse me. As we breed towards pointer, we move away from the retrieving category. And you can get clear down to here some of the older style English pointers. I don't want to say older style, but some of the English pointers that are more exclusively bred to be bird dogs, they lose retrieving desire almost completely, but they'll stand forever. Well, that's great, but we also need them to be able to do the other. So we try and have this balance, but we shade this way. Now, where I'm going with this roundabout story here with our goals with the program is how we utilize pedigrees to look at that. Now, what would you say is the primary goal of the ranch breeding program? Because you were talking about, can we get additional mass and tine height and things? What is the ideal buck that you're trying to produce for the ranch?
So the ideal buck that we're looking for is a true South Texas typical, heavy frame, long tines, and just a real clean look.
Typical deer. Yep. Okay.
Now you're gonna get, in the mix of that, you're gonna get those non-typicals.
Sure.
It's gonna happen, but we want to take known characteristics. So use one of our breeder bucks, Outcast, for example.
Got it.
Every offspring buck that we've harvested and or kept have all been 200 inches plus.
Okay.
He throws, and he throws width. We know that he throws width. So I want to take that width. He also can throw trash, non-typical trash at the same time.
Okay.
So I want to take that. It goes to that tipping scale you got. You want big, but you don't want non-typical.
Does the non-typical aspect of things typically come in as you're able to breed larger deer? Does it start like, is it the gene that basically says we've got mass and stuff, can also start throwing, let's throw more antler out there, and it just comes in whatever form? Or is it more based off of true genetic predisposition? This is a non-typical, it throws non-typical.
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So you'll have some bucks that only throw non-typical.
Interesting.
And you'll have some that will throw typical, but every now and then you may have a non-typical year. We'll use Outcast, for example. Again, this year he's 6 years old. He is at his most typical form this year.
Okay.
He did have some trash. When I say trash, I don't mean trash. I just mean non-typical.
Yeah, that's the cue for. I mean, that's the term for
kickers
and things. Trash. Yeah, absolutely. So it's but when you get into those pieces, is that stuff can also be affected by
the environment.
The environment. Okay.
So have more protein you feed them, the more
bone that tries to come out.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
So we feed in the pens a 16% protein year round. So that's pretty. Their diet remains stable. 16% protein, free choice, and then we get the texture feed, which is 18% protein with alfalfa mixed in. So all the deer's diet are the same. So use that as a control. And then going back to that tipping scale you mentioned there. So you want to grow big, you want to grow clean. So as soon as they start, you mix your breeding plan, you try to get further this way, but if they start going too far this way, okay, maybe we need to breed with something else to try to bring them back to that status quo.
Absolutely.
So then that's what we're looking at here. We have a buck this year with Outcast. So we got Outcast this year. This is a picture, kind of late development, pretty clean, typical. Has a couple kickers off his tines, with a pretty good kicker off his end here.
Wow.
This is the type of look that we're shooting for. Pretty much heavy, clean, and looks symmetrical. Yeah. So what I want to do this year and next year is focus on two particular deer, Outcast and then SOS.
Okay.
Outcast and SOS. Well, this is an early picture. He does have the non-typical points around the base, but he has everything else that Outcast is lacking. Tine length, which is pretty much the only thing Outcast is missing, is tine length. So we have a buck that's fairly typical, but has some trash. Then we have Outcast on the flip side that's almost perfectly symmetrical, typical, but he's lacking.
Yeah.
He's lacking that time link. So I want to mix the bloodlines of Outcast and SOS to try to get that wide, even taller, heavy mass typical, which would be the desire of any hunter.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an interesting thing that you're talking about 3 generations. So when we've done different breedings here, well, here's an example of, let me go ahead and pull 2 dogs that have been down here, and I'll show you how we break this process down. We're going to look at Piper and Doc breeding. So Doc is kind of the El Tesoro medicine man. He's the head of the program. You've hunted behind him. Yeah,
yes, sir.
He's a cool dude. So when we utilize this, it's very similar. It's a database program, but you've got some additional pieces that I really like and how that's built out. When we look at this, I've got the Piper Doc breeding. The coefficient of inbreeding on this is 9.7%. It's on the lighter side for our line breeding category.
Yes, sir.
But still falls in the zone of it is partially line bred. Now, all of these colors that are in here, those are all repeated ancestors. So I don't know if it does a color portion on that.
It doesn't do the color portion on ours, but we can go to we'll use because I know SOS is inbreed coefficient.
Sure.
So we'll pull SOS up here, and then I'm going to pull just a random doe up at.
Yeah.
So over here with SOS and Orange 204, which Orange 204 is Stone Cold Daughter over Mighty Judge. But we look over on the right-hand side here, we have the estimated bloodline for that particular offspring that would come out of that cross. So obviously we got 50% each on top and bottom, SOS and then 204. But then we break it down even further with and it basically this is very little
percentage blood.
Correct.
Right? So that's awesome. We do the exact same thing here. When you pull up on this database side of things, we go into the genetics portion, and I can calculate inbreeding for this specific, and then we look at right here is percent of blood, which is exactly what you were talking about. And I'm looking at 10 generations for this. I'm going to sort this here. So the offspring, right, the puppy here, unnamed, which would actually, Piper Doc is Quinn, which is one of the young puppies that was running today.
Yes, sir.
So she's 100% of herself, right? And then you've got your 50-50, 25 for all of the grandparents. It's exactly the same as what you're looking at, right? Now, then when you come below that, you see this right here, 22.75. So that's almost a grandparent, but doesn't show up until generation 6. How wild is that?
Pretty wild.
So when we pull a breeding up, if I'm looking at this, and I feel like applying some of these additional pieces is may help with your ability to do the predicting like you're trying to do, or at least this is what I pretend it works for me, right? So we come into this percentage blood, and then you can look at these pieces like Hillhaven Hustler and Man in Black. So generation, if you're looking at what a grandparent, this would be this is our
this parent be a grandparent, great grandparent, and this is 4 generations back to be a great grandparent.
And in this situation, that would be a great grandparent, which would be 12.5%.
Yes, sir.
This great grandparent shows up as 21% blood, and then this, what would it be as generation 6? Great.
4 greats.
Lots of greats. Shows up as the equivalent of almost a grandparent. So the next piece that we look at here is, because I'm actually pulling 10 generations on every single breeding that we do, and I have almost all of them in there. You look at, this is calculated here, and then we do the next piece was I would sort this, and it shows Hillhaven Hustler, which when I click on that, it makes it really hard to read. Hillhaven's Hustler, he shows up 97 times. So in a 10-generation pedigree, there's 2,046 holes to fill. Hustler fills 97 of them, which is kind of wild.
It's kind of on the heavy side.
Yes, it is. But what we're able to do with that is predict what Hustler technically throws on a regular basis in these type of things, where the polar opposite of this would be some of the breedings that we had done in the past, like this is a breeding that we did a while ago, and it's snap to a male named Cash, and that the inbreeding coefficient right here is 21.1%, which is getting more normal. We're usually 15 to 25% approximately. We pull up in here again, inbreeding for this. You've got a count that is totally different. You have Axel von Wasserschläg, or check my German pronunciation there, but he shows up 57 times. So he's in that category now of being that top sire in the 10-generation process.
Yes, sir.
Now, those dogs are, I don't want to say polar opposites, but basically polar opposites of the heavily Hillhaven Hustler bred dogs, in a sense of these dogs typically fall into the category more German bred. That's that. It's a different ask out of the versatile dog. They do more fur-related stuff, more tracking. They need a little bit sharper, or sharp usually falls in a category of physically tough, I would say. Can be, I don't want to say aggressive because they're not, but they can tend to have a little bit of an edgier personality. But they also fall into that zone of really strong retrievers and really strong on the versatile aspect. The fur, the water, those pieces are heavy. Where they, in that sliding scale, and we've moved this way, we do lack a little bit sometimes in that pointing and natural backing category. People often talk to us about backing. That's when the one dog points the main dog, right? The other dogs point the main dog. So in that backing category, they say, well, what's the best way to teach backing? Breeding is the best way to teach backing. So it's a thing that if the dogs love it and want to do it, it comes naturally. If they don't, you fight it. You can teach them, but you fight it all the time. Now, the difference that I've seen, a huge contrast and difference between your breeding program and mine, is there's still a big proponent of training involved in developing these dogs and what they can be, where your training is just in nutrition and feed aspect of things. You're kind of, I don't want to say stuck, but you're stuck with what you've got genetically.
Correct. You can't train them to be bigger. You can't train them not to get sick all the time. So you're stuck on breeding for those characteristics. You're breeding for the antler characteristics. You're breeding for genetically healthier deers, one that doesn't get sick all the time.
Yeah.
So in a way, all you have is your breeding.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing with that ties into another, I don't have the information here, but people know I like pigeon racing, all right? That falls more into the same category as you're talking. We do ship to one loft races, and those handlers do train the birds, but at the same time, it's an equal training across the board, where I don't know that I've officially gone on record saying this, but I believe over the last decade, maybe 15 years now, that our ability to train dogs and ability to train bird dogs specifically has grown exponentially. That shows true across the board all the way around. You look at the number of dogs at the NAVDA Invitational, for an example, that highest, it's an invite only. They have to do really well at the utility test and get a prize one to be able to have an invite to this higher level of test. The number of dogs that have gone has increased, which means that the dogs are doing better at that level below at the utility test, as well as the number of dogs that are passing has also increased. So can you say we're breeding better dogs? Probably. But can you also say we're getting better at training? Yes. Now, back in the day, if you will, when I started, which is approaching 20 years ago now with short hairs, it was a category of, I felt like every single short hair that came into the kennel was mentally stable and could become a bird dog. Two things: mentally stable and could become some level of higher performing bird dog. I do feel like that's not as much the case anymore. I can get a random short hair for someone, and there's a lot of good breeders out there. I'm not saying we're the only good breeders of short hairs, but there are a lot of breeders out there, and people that are just breeding for, I don't want the backyard breeding, but they did their single breeding with their one dog or what have you, and we're working away from that mental stability category where they do struggle to settle in. They have some more anxious type of personality that comes out, and the growth in our ability to train dogs, I feel, is hurting the breeding aspect of it, because we can fix stuff, and then once you've fixed something, you can kind of ignore that it was there to begin with. So
Right.
you're like, oh wow, we've done the things. This dog is a utility prize and a master hunter and it's done all these things, but what did it take to get it there? Where in the past, it was more of a guaranteed thing that they were going to excel. And as we become better dog trainers, I feel like it has hurt the breed as a whole, and probably all breeds as a whole, because we can compensate for the lack with making it up in the training department.
Right.
So in your case, you don't have that. And in the pigeon's case, which is what we do with that, I pretty much have breeding characteristics like you're talking about: size, wing structure, body build, and then performance. Like, what did they turn out to be? And there is some training. There's better handlers out there, but still, you've got those individual pieces that you're basically just breeding off of pedigrees and genetics to try and improve on what you got.
Yes, sir. So one good thing where we're sitting right now, just like we'll go back to SOS here. His inbreed coefficient is 0.02, so 2%, with a 40% diversity.
And I want to point this out while you're looking at it right here. When we talked before, you were saying his inbreeding coefficient, and my brain goes to percentages on that, but then I'm seeing 0.02, and I'm thinking 0.02, what is that, 967%. Like, wow, there's no inbreeding in this at all. How are you doing these half, grandchildren to whatever things, and we're still this low? But it is. It's a 2%.
It's a 2%.
Okay.
So what that's allowing me to do is tighten up those pedigrees
Absolutely.
a lot more. I can breed him to his, not strictly to his daughter, but I can breed him to very similar pedigrees and not have to worry about becoming too inbred.
What is, speaking on that specifically, what is the tightest deer that you have ever seen inbreeding coefficient wise?
The tightest deer that we have is 40%. And funny note on her, 15% with 35% diversity. So
15% inbreeding coefficient.
15%
is the tightest.
Is the tightest that we have in the pens right now.
Okay.
And funny thing about her is, I don't know if
this is a doe then.
It's a doe.
Okay.
I don't know if it is has to do with that, but she does not produce.
Interesting.
So this year I scaled back on. I did not AI her. I'm live breeding her to see if she will produce via that way, or is it just an AI thing? Will she not take artificial insemination? So I'm using kind of not really throwing inbreed coefficient out, but being it's the highest I have currently, and it's one of the ones that is not producing. Granted, she's also 7 years old, which...
How long is a typical life?
In the pens, it can vary, because I have some 14-year-olds, I have some 13-year-olds. They're still breeding just fine.
Does or bucks? I'm assuming that changes some.
Does seem to be breeding longer.
Okay.
Outcast is probably on his last couple years of breeding, because he's 6 years old, and I don't want to put too much stress on him as he gets older.
Sure.
But I just want to see, does the higher inbreed coefficient with 833 correlate to her lack of producing?
Sure.
Or is it just a specific to that general deer? My closest other one is 14%. She breeds just fine.
Yeah.
But My goal in the next couple years is to tighten everything up. I want to get a little bit higher IBCs because we're averaging 3%.
Yeah.
Which we have a lot of room for a better line breeding going forward.
The interesting thing about that is cattle numbers are insane. They go through the roof. You can see, and for that, like the pigeon numbers specifically, I could pull that up on. We actually have a pedigree that I own, a company called Loft Manager Online. So it's a online database program similar to what we have here for pigeons specifically. And like there'll be birds in there that have one grandpa and great grandpa, and like you'll see the same bird show up, and you're breeding full siblings together that are then bred to their another full siblings, like a child of that is being bred, and you got the same daddy and the same grandpas and all the things. But with the dog aspect of things, there's a lot of different thoughts on this process. So I've heard of numbers in the 50+% in cattle. Now, the interesting thing about that and your observations or thought processes on fertility aspect of things is that the first things that go when you get quote unquote too tight is mothering instincts. They'll drop calves and walk away, or and then fertility. So as you get tighter, it's like nature saying, hey, this is too tight. Now, the flip side of that, and there's an argument. There's another gentleman, I don't say argument, but there's an argument to that idea is, and we had a previous conversation with him specifically. He says there's no such thing as too tight. As you get tighter, all you see is what is there. So if you have fertility issues in those lines, then it comes out. And if you're breeding on that, then you're going to produce a whole bunch of fertility issues. But like your 14% deer doesn't have the fertility issues. So if you went tighter on that, you likely still wouldn't see fertility issues, is the thought process there. And people get scared when they do a breeding that is tighter, especially dogs-wise, if they have something with a health issue or they have something with a abnormality at birth, a birth defect. And there is definitely a difference in full genetic issues and then congenital issues. Something happened in your utero process that caused this birth defect, whether that be, in this case, probably not nutrition, but nutrition could play a role in it, or a sickness happened of some sort, some form of infection, or on top of that matter, a physical trauma. Let's say they get run into by somebody who spooks or something, and then that causes a lack of true attachment, or that fetus gets injured and they're not getting proper nutrition and blood supply and things like that, and then they just don't grow right.
Right.
So there definitely are a lot of variables with it. And who is this here?
This is 418. This is a one of the bucks I'm holding back as a yearling, holding back as a
That's a yearling?
That's a yearling for a potential breeder buck. 4% inbreed coefficient, but still right at 40% diversity.
Okay.
So
what is the diversity metric pulled from? What is that? I have a hunch that it's similar to our unique ancestors category, but I'm not sure.
That's pretty much what it is there.
Okay.
So genetic diversity drives growth. So you want to have that high diversity, and that way you're not continuously breeding those bad alleles. Those in our case for CWD resistance.
Interesting.
So if you see up here this GEBV, that is the genetic variation on the 96 allele, and for CWD resistance, we're at the codon 96 is where they're looking. You want it to be a negative GEBV, particularly with an SS or GS.
Who has done the DNA studies on this? Is it primarily led by a specific university, or?
It's through Texas A&M.
Okay, yeah.
It's through A&M.
Yeah, so they're doing the research on deer specifically that have CWD.
And seeing what was at that 96 codon, compared to the ones that were tested that did not, and seeing where that correlation was on what was positive, what's not. So where the science is right now, if you follow the science, is that that SS or that GS negative, and that's what you look at any breeders now. That's what they're shooting towards.
Interesting.
On our end, do we look at it? Yes, but our main goal is for releasing to the pasture. We're not holding those deer. We're not selling those deer. So we still look at it because we want our does to be genetically healthy. When I say genetically healthier, I'm talking about that CWD resistance. But we also,
because currently with the program here, nothing leaves the ranch.
Nothing leaves the ranch.
Yeah.
Nothing comes in. Nothing leaves.
Absolutely.
So we're a closed facility.
And when you're pulling in, now for the genetic diversity aspect, we say nothing comes in. You're bringing in, I'm assuming, semen.
We're bringing in semen.
Got it.
No live animals are coming in. With the way how the world is today with the regulations, the risk isn't worth the reward for us anyway of bringing in or selling deer.
Yeah, I mean, it could instantly. I mean, it's a big deal if you tested positive at some point in time. I mean, they come in and kill everything. I mean, it's
so what Texas Parks and Wildlife do. If you test positive, they'll come in, they'll quarantine your herd, and they'll depopulate the herd
as necessary
to test all the deer in the facility.
Wow.
And then anyone who you sold to also becomes a trace facility where they don't get depopulated, but you have to test the deer that were sold. Where that comes into a problem is on the release deer.
Sure.
Because you can't easily get your hand on those deer.
Yeah.
And be the same thing with us. If we were to test positive after releasing, we would have to test all of our hunter harvest, which comes a pain, but it's not impossible.
Sure.
But to minimize the risk, close the facility down to where we don't bring anything in, don't send anything out. Everything is born on the place and does not leave the property.
Interesting. So we've found over the years a lot, and I'm going to list off a handful of them. But we found that there are a lot of more obscure. There's the obvious traits that are heritable, but there's a lot more obscure things that we see, which always leads me to my statement that everything is genetic. I have a belief, and I've talked about it before, but a dog, specifically in a situation, has a genetic path, and it's hard to move them from that path. It takes a lot of lack of training or improper development to stray that animal towards not able to excel. And it takes a lot to move them into a category that is higher than, and there's a range on that, right? But to go exponentially higher than what your potential is or exponentially lower than what your potential is takes a lot.
They're almost genetically
predisposed
for that. Yeah. For that trait.
And some of the more obvious ones with dogs specifically would be like pointing instinct or retrieving desire, coat color, bone structure, size, all the physical things that you can see. The weird ones that we've started to notice are things like cleanliness. So little puppies that are hard to potty train, they grow up and you forget about the fact that they were hard to potty train, and then they have puppies and their puppies are hard to potty train. So it's that's a one that's interesting. The other side of it comes down to noise is I think it follows personality, and personality is a heritable trait that we see. You act just like your mother or you act just like your dad. And in our process of breeding, we take all of those things into consideration. Like every piece of what we see in those dogs is part of what we're trying to either produce or change, eliminate, all of the things. Now, that being said, and I'm sure that it's the same with the deer, there's no such thing as perfect.
There's no perfect.
There's always striving for something slightly better or slightly different. How can we improve on what we're doing? And if we're not improving,
you're falling back.
Yeah. You're only doing one or the other. You're moving forward or you're falling back. So
you mentioned looking like your dad, looking like your mom.
Yeah.
Or acting like your mom, your dad. We had a buck harvested this morning. As soon as I saw him, you look just like he looks just like his dad. I mean, the way the tines curled in,
Yeah.
everything was just like his dad, except for the mass
Okay.
that came from the dam side.
Interesting. Everything else, pieces wise, structurally, is very similar.
Was from the sire.
Awesome. Do you see even just facial features, color, eyes, shape, things like that, till you can go like your face looks, even if you eliminate antler? Do you see that aspect of it?
On certain bloodlines, I can notice that.
It's not just a deer. That's the same side of things, pigeon wise. But dogs are very much this way. But even the pigeons, people go, "Oh, it's a pigeon." Well, when you really start to look at them, they do the same. They follow. You look just like your mother, and you look just like your father. It's very, very interesting.
One thing that we noticed the most on is the temperament.
Yeah.
If that doe's calm, it doesn't matter if it's a buck fawn or doe fawn. That fawn is going to be almost as calm as that mother was.
Does it affect, like, so from the pen side of things, if you have that one, it can mess up the entire dynamic of that pen, and you remove one
if
animal?
there is a wild one,
Yeah.
that doe is, or buck, but specifically that doe is set for release. It doesn't matter what her pedigree is. If she's wild, she's got to go.
Yeah.
Because that one wild deer can change that whole pen dynamic.
That's interesting. Check out this. We've got this dog's name is Ariel von Hegehaus. It's another German side of things. And the old German pedigrees, they don't care about line breeding. They care about line breeding. They don't care about the coefficient. It doesn't like, it's like the tighter the better in their opinion. Okay, so again, we're looking at 10 generations. There's 2,046 slots in that. This dog, Ariel von Hegehaus, it takes 219 dogs to fill all 2,046 slots.
Oh.
219 dogs. But at the same time, his COI, coefficient of inbreeding here, is only 31.6%. So this is where you look at, when we look at I see up front, the most effect in the pedigree itself, the most effect of the COI is by the first 3 generations. And then when you get into that unique ancestor, which shows you more, and I don't know if it's the same calculation based off of where it has tied into what you're looking at from a genetic diversity standpoint, but it is essentially, there's a lack of genetic diversity here, right?
Yes, sir.
You can pull up the COI being that, and then when we come into, sorry, I rambled in that thought. The first 3 generations is most directly affects the COI. The last 4 in that, or 6, in that category to get to 10, that is where you see the biggest change in that unique ancestor category. You get back into 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 generations. That's where you're seeing a lot of those repeats. So that same dog here, if I sort this by count, Nixie to, I'm not even going to try, Ryan shows up 90 times. Now, that's insane. We're not too far. I mean, we're right in that zone with the Hillhaven Hustler side of things. But then this next one, Axel von, I'm horrible with these, shows up 90 times. Axel von Wasserschlick, 87 times. You've got another one here that drops into 50, 46. We come into that percentage blood category again. You got 50-50, right? And then you have this dog right here. Minimum generation is 3, which should mean that he would be 25%. He's 43.75% blood.
So he's almost the same as a full parent at that point.
As a grandparent.
Correct.
It's wild. And then you pull some of these other ones in here, like this one right here. It shows up in the 6th generation, which is determined great-great-grandparent. 6th great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparent. Okay, 6th generation, and we're at 29.05%, so more than a grandparent. It's nuts.
That's insane.
And then when you pull up and look at it, I like to look visually. I really enjoyed this. The whole thing is colored.
Lots of repeats.
Lots of repeats, right? We didn't have to reinvent the wheel on this. So that's one example of extreme. And Ariel von Hegehaus falls into some of the lines that we've had more in the past that are more towards the German stuff. And in that category, again, you're talking about something this tightly bred. He bred literally everything, and they'll continue to have fertility, right? I mean, they weeded out the problems, essentially, which is what they always talk about. Well, you can breed past problems by eliminating what's not there, and if you have something that throws whatever weird and you get the one that doesn't, that one no longer has those genes. Breaking it down into the simplest form of this idea, no longer has those genes and can move forward in the process. So you've bred past a problem, potentially. Now, that's, again, a gross simplification, but still, in the most part, if they're displaying a lot, you breed tighter on it and you see more of it, but you get the one that doesn't, you can eliminate the problem. So that's the thought process, anyhow, behind.
On your stuff, and this one in particular,
yeah.
What would you estimate the diversity on that one is, genetic diversity, with that high of a?
Well, let's just do the basic percentage here, and I don't know if it's going to fall. What do we do here? You calculate. So that would be
10%, almost 11%.
It's got to be. And we're looking for higher genetic diversity, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's probably close. So I just took the 219 dogs divided by the 2,046 slots, and we end up with a 10% genetic diversity. Now, if we look at the same respect on one of these other, a more typical breeding for us would be closer to that 700, and we're in the like 35%, 34% genetic diversity category. If that's the same, let's see if we can find it. Calculate genetic diversities measured in several different metrics. They're all based on allele frequencies and in populations. So it's probably more involved than this. A variety of genetic traits within a species measuring involves several key metrics. So again, that's a simplification, but probably is in the category of accurate. This is all guesses here, but I feel like if we're looking at that,
I mean, it makes sense. The higher inbred coefficient, the lower that genetic diversity would be, compared to low inbred coefficient, you have higher diversity.
Absolutely.
But in dogs, you have that specific trait, that specific ability that you breed for, so you keep going to try to keep breeding that way.
Absolutely. The other side of it is we get a larger sample. I mean, what is the number of fawns? I know in the wild I see a lot of twins, but what's the number of fawns you typically get out of a doe?
This year I averaged 1.73 fawns per doe.
Okay, so approximately twins, right?
Correct.
Where in this, I think if I looked up our average, we're probably closer this year specifically to 8 puppies per litter. And that's a lot more sample size. And what we see, so even if we break down, one of the simpler things to track genetically would just be color. In short hairs, you've got liver and black. All right, so you can draw out a simple Punnett square, and I can put one up, but the black is the dominant characteristic, so you've got a big B and then a little b for that characteristic, and then the recessive would be little b, and what you come out with is a approximately 50-50 chance that if a breeding is a black dog that is heterozygous to a liver dog, you're going to have a flip of a coin on each puppy that comes out. Now, if you flip the coin 6 times, you may get all heads, you may get all tails, but if you flip it 100 times, you're probably getting closer to 50-50. And so in that situation, you've got, with the larger number of puppies in a litter, you've got a better chance of seeing that 50-50. And then as, let's say a female has 3 litters of puppies, we're in the 20 category. If you look at all of it and she's bred if you do the same breeding over and over again, you're probably going to be in that zone of approximately 12 blacks and 12 liver puppies. Now, on the flip side of that, you can get into a homozygous black dog, which would only produce black dogs. Some of them homozygous, some of them heterozygous, depending on if you bred the homozygous black dog to another black dog. And then you can essentially you can breed away from liver as being an option. Everything is homozygous black, and then it goes away. So it's a big part of why we typically are trying to do that cross, just from a color standpoint.
Is there a particular color that y'all like better, or is liver or black?
Nah. we just try and have a balance. So we do pick sometimes based on that. Like example being right now, my next, because we have Riot coming up, and he's a superstar, absolute stud. He found 2 of the coveys of quail this morning, and you saw him working, tracking. I mean, he followed some of those a long way before he got them pinned down.
And did they flush? He'd go right back to him. And
yes. So he's an up-and-comer, and he's a black and white male. So our next dog that we'll be looking as the up-and-comer category will be the liver side of things, so that we have that balance of options. Yep. What is the most exciting breeding for you? You've got to have something that you're looking forward to the most. What is kind of the piece that is most exciting this year in your program?
I'm more looking forward this year. We purchased semen from a buck called Flawless, which is...
You got a picture of him?
I do.
And I've got an idea that he probably falls close to living up to his name.
He's pretty flawless.
Now, why are you excited about him?
Well, he's perfect dream over Stitches.
Okay.
So SOS is a Stitches son. We have Perfect Dream daughters in the pen. Perfect Dream, one of the prettiest deer I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so tightening up that Perfect Dream, and no matter what offspring come out of him, that we get out of him,
yeah,
there's so many possibilities I can breed to any of my SOS daughters, to any of my Perfect Dream. So it just opens the possibilities up for the future. I tend to not look at the here and now. I'm looking at the future, what can be.
Absolutely. Now that is something that I don't do as much in. I don't do as much in the dog world, but I definitely do in the pigeon world. I am trying to do reproductions of things that are winning, trying to do reproductions of things that won for me, and oh yeah.
So this guy right here is Flawless. He's got everything that we're looking for here at the ranch, and the fact that he's out of the same bloodline of a buck that actually died on the ranch.
Oh wow.
So it's by bringing his semen in, we're able to tighten up our pedigrees a lot and open the door to future breeding plans.
And to break it down in what we're talking about with tightening up genetics. So when you have a lot of genetic diversity, each of those animals has their own set of genes and traits that they can pass on.
Correct.
And when you've got those big, what we refer to as outcrosses, is the same term that you would use?
Correct.
Okay, outcrosses, you have a lot more pieces as you're going, let's build this deer. We're going to pull one from here and here and here and here and here and here. And when you can shrink that genetic pool, not too much, but a little bit, you start to say, oh, well, we've got 5 options to pull from here. So now you're pulling more of the pieces that create consistency.
You get that consistency.
Yep.
And that's what we're looking for at the does. A lot of our does are, unfortunately, we have now our outcrosses.
Okay.
So we have to tighten up those offspring.
I got it.
Then,
now, let's pull up the pedigrees that you were talking. So
on him, he's Perfect Dream on top and Stitches on bottom.
So Perfect Dream
over Stitches, over Mighty Thor, all of which are does that we currently have in our facility.
Okay.
So I actually bred Flawless to some of my Perfect Dream daughters this year.
Got it.
I bred 6 total does to Flawless. 3 of those are Perfect Dream daughters. The other 3 of those are or SOS daughters. So I doubled up on the Perfect Dream on 3 of them. On the flip side, I doubled up on the Stitches on the other 3, just to see what kind of cross works better.
Absolutely. So you have you're also attempting to recreate Flawless you have Perfect Dream and Stitches.
Correct.
So pull one of those pedigrees up for what you're actually breeding.
I'm going to go to Dream Deer here, because this Dream Deer will give us the a visual representation of the cross that we. So in this case, we got Flawless on top, Perfect Dream, but it goes back to the Thug and the Big Boy, which is further down his pedigree, which is like back here.
Yeah. So
we're tightening that up, and then we'll go to got Perfect Dream on top on Flawless. Then we have a Perfect Dream granddaughter here, and then also over outcasts. So
Oh yeah.
so now we got that tine length with outcasts as mass. So looking at that, these are just interesting crosses that
I liked how you were doing the line breeding, especially essentially on what created those pieces with
correct.
great grandparent or grandparents and great grandparents.
And this goes back to like 247, flawless on top. Well, perfect dreams back here in the great grandparents.
Yeah.
And also, this would be Outcast's great grandpa with 906. So we doubled up on the perfect dream, top and bottom, different further back in the lineage, but we also threw in some of Outcast's
The size
correct.
there. That's awesome. So, an interesting thing in the bird side of stuff, and this is something I see. Not all of them, but a lot less people are paying attention this far, and I'll hear a lot like you don't need more than 3 generations. I'm like, well, I kind of think I do. I don't know. So I pull all those pieces, and there's a bird specifically called black power. Okay, and black power, we can pull up. Let's do this. 5-1. I named this bird Horsepower. Kind of a fun, exciting name. So he is a cross of Alphonse Class. I know we're getting a little off the dogs and deer, folks, but you know me, I like my pigeons. So the pedigree aspect of things here shows we are dark horse, which is Alphonse Class, and it goes back to this dark horse bird here. And as you pull through that, we'll go to the sire, and then you get into this stuff right here, which is Birdie, Sister Birdie 210. So it's all off of this bird named Birdie. I know it's a real unique name there. And we can continue on through that to see Sister Birdie, which is it's a full sibling to a bird named Birdie, who was a really popular, goes all the way back to this bird right here, daughter Carl Lewis. Carl Lewis and Naomi. This is a super breeding pair for a guy named Hardy Kruger, okay? He's a guy from, I believe, Germany as well. He's won a ton. This is the key that's built out this black power bird, and all of these pieces win a bunch all over the world. And so I start looking through all of these pieces, and that's where I put all of the generations together. We come full circle back to the original bird here, and when you get onto this bottom side is black power line bred. So though this Alphonse Class stuff is not related, it goes all the way back to Birdie, which ties into Carlos and Naomi, which is behind this. So it's essentially a line breeding on great-great-grandparents. You've got similar characteristics that can tie things up and give us a little more consistency in what we're producing.
Yes, sir.
So he wins and ends up with, I think he clocked, let's see here, I've got it listed 10th place. We won 10 grand. It's kind of a cool deal. Now, the awesome part about this is I bred him to a inbred, there's a race called the KBDB series, and it's a sprint series. So there's sprint, middle distance, long distance stuff. We primarily fly middle distance stuff here in the United States, but in order to win, it's getting more and more competitive. You need more speed. So you've got to be able to find a balance of, I've got enough speed to win the middle distance race, but enough distance to be able to complete the middle distance race. Because you get too much speed, you can't make it 350 miles. And if you get not enough speed, you don't win the 350 miles. So I took and crossed Horsepower onto Miss Greipel 547. And it came up with these birds, which became a very consistent winner this year, which is Horsepower to this 547. You've got Kittle. Greipel is a full brother to this bird, Kittle, who set the KBDB record in 2013, which was just broken by one of his great-grandchildren, the Blizzard King. So it's cool to be able to see these pieces, but this is the key component that's done in the birds themselves to provide genetic diversity so that you have strong offspring to race. They take tightly line-bred stuff to tightly line-bred stuff, and then you get this outcross that pulls pieces from both because it's a smaller gene pool, and so you still have pieces of both of them there. They bred 4 babies this year. 3 of them were in the money. 2 of them first drop winners, meaning they won the final equal first. So it's kind of cool to be able to see that. The other piece that I've done this with is a line call from Gabby Van Annabelle, a Belgium guy who's won all over the place. So we do tightly bred Gabby pigeons to tightly bred Kittle pigeons. So that's the pieces that have been winning all the way around. But it's doing exactly what you're talking about with pulling from those grandparents and trying to bring some line breeding pieces in. And now this year, I'm taking all of these, what would be considered hybrids, and crossing them together so you have different Gabby pieces and different Kittle pieces on the tops and bottoms, where you're pulling the same thing but still adding additional genetic diversity. It's wild.
Very wild.
It's wild. So this year, the big piece is the flawless, which is perfect dream over stitches. And when are you going to be able to start to see, how long is it going to take for you to be able to start to see how that's panning out? What do you typically look at?
Right at 3 years.
Really?
So we'll the does bred this year will fawn this summer.
Okay.
Will fawn this coming summer. And then as yearlings, we can kind of see what those bucks will look like, but you really can never tell what a deer's going to look like by the yearling set of antlers, because it all depends on when they were born. I
saw a study on that about a spike turns into this massive deer. Like it used to be a shoot all the spikes thing.
Correct. So really by the time they're 2 is when I'll know if that breeding plan actually worked.
Started, yeah.
But with the does, I'll breed those does already as yearlings. So kind of taking a crapshoot, if you will, on those does. But for the bucks, 2 to 3 years, you can really tell if it worked.
Well, that's very exciting. I hope that we can touch base again. I appreciate all of your time today. I've really enjoyed the conversation to compare and contrast the deer and the pigeons and the dogs, and kind of geeking out with you a little bit on somebody that appreciates the pedigree side of things. And
yes, sir.
Hopefully we can touch base here in a couple of years and see if this specific plan has worked out for you.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.